And they, in end of 15, beginning of 16, attacked this ridge. But so many of them were mown down in the valley. Apparently you couldn't tell whether it was their red tunics or the blood in the fields. There were thousands, and it is still marked up on maps today as Valley of the Zouaves. They were quite a fearsome Moroccan regiment who were almost annihilated just in this field that we're driving down now.
Interesting. That's metal, like tabard, I think he said.
No means the first visitors to have come up to visit this memorial. As you come out of the woods here, you can just across the field on your left. And this memorial was completely undamaged during the Second World War. Thanks to the blokes that you can see in the middle of this photo. He served north of Arras, out across the coal plains, which you can see on your left hand side with all the remains of the slag heaps. So Adolf was a corporal across there on the left, and after the war he came back. He knew that the memorial had been built in the area. It's a memorial that was built to signify the grief of Canada. And if you look to the left of the memorial, there's a large white figure, and that is the female figure symbolising Canada, and she's looking down on the grave of the tomb of the unknown soldier. It's a memorial to peace. There are no military insignia on there at all, other than the soldiers' names. There are no weapons, there's nothing whatsoever. And for that reason, Hitler left his Waffen SS during the Second World War in sole charge of that. They were ordered under no certain terms to ensure that nobody damaged it, and they were to use any means necessary to protect it. So I don't know whether anyone was shot in the process, but if you have a look at the photo, you can see that the Germans have actually protected the sculptures on the memorial between the two pylons with sheep boarding, and it was guarded at all times by the SS. He wasn't all that bad. It was French troops that first managed to take this high ground ahead of us, and it was known as the Labyrinth, and this was a maze of German trenches above ground and Allied tunnels underground. So it was a pretty horrific war to get underneath and plant mines underneath the trenches, not knowing whether you'd been detected by those above who would then be bombing you from above. But it was the French that took this high ground above us. In the woods, and the woods up on your left, over your left hand shoulder. The French have taken the high ground straight ahead of us, and the wooded hill over on the right hand side and the villages either side of it were full of British artillery, and everything was being concentrated on the ridge, which is where we've been earlier on. We were talking about figures and statistics. The Somme is something that everyone quotes, with tens of thousands of people dying. It was all pretty horrific, didn't really matter where you were. But the Battle of Arras lasted for 41 days officially, and in those 41 days, 4,000 men were being killed every single day. So you think what your local football stadium's like and try and work out how long it would take to empty that. Building that you can see just in the gap of the trees as you get onto this second bit of the lane over on the left hand side is on the northern limits of modern day Arras, and the southern limit of it is just above that water fountain that you can see over about 2 o'clock. So the whole of the Battle of Arras was concentrated pretty much in, or the main part of it, it went a bit further south, was concentrated just in the sort of 110 degrees of view that you've got here. So that's where they were all going.
Yeah.
As you're looking in the woods on your right, anything that doesn't follow the natural lie of the land is man-made, either through munitions or through trench digging. You have to take my word for it, and you really must come back in December, because you can see right the way through there, and when there's no leaves on the trees, it's quite obvious where all the trench lines are. Orange Hill was the hill that the cavalry came off to charge. I think I was telling you about the cavalry, the horses collapsing and dying because they were frozen to death the morning of their charge. And they were in the field on our left-hand side, in the triangle between the water tower, the wind turbine and these pylons that are just on your left. And they were charging directly towards Montjuïc-le-Preux Church, which we can see yet again, just over your left-hand shoulder.
Oh yeah, it's there again.
And as you come to the top of the crest, there's Orange Hill Cemetery, which is just on our right-hand side. And if you work out the line of sight from Montjuïc-le-Preux to Orange Hill Cemetery, it's just below the crest of the hill, completely outside of the German guns. So that would have been a place where all of the medics would have been taking people back to. They may well have been even the guys that are in that photograph on page 8, I think it was, sitting at a clearing station. It could have been them there. And then directly in front of that, and us again, is the city of Arras, but between here and there is Observation Ridge. And Observation Ridge is a place which Al Frazzle visited, knowing that that's where he'd come from on his way into Happy Valley. Coming down this track, if you get glimpses over the top of the crop, just at about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, on the just below the skyline is a crane, and you can see a little cemetery. That's Udun Lane, and all of the trenches around here were named in sectors. So all of the trenches up there would have begun with the letter H. Udun Lane was a name that had been given to a trench by the French soldiers up here, and the burials of those soldiers were carried out in the cemetery, or in the burial plot, which then became the cemetery on Udun Lane Trench. So this was the front line. We are now probably about 20 yards into no man's land. British trenches up on your left on the ridge, and German artillery pieces in the embankments up on your right. So this is how close they were to each other. You'd have been able to throw stones at each other, let alone shoot your enemy. You remember me telling you the story about the chemical works, or the comical works, depending which side you were on. We're going to go under the railway embankment, and the chemical works were just on the other side of this embankment, so all of the British troops had to get up and over the embankment that we're now simply driving under. And all of the remains of the artillery pieces and shell holes you'll see in this field, the pock marks in this field. So that field on your right now, apart from having animals on it over the decades, hasn't changed since the Battle of Arras in 1917. But we come up to this cemetery up here, and there are only about 76 burials in there. They were all buried during and after the Battle of Arras. Montjuïc-le-Preux will come into sight on the left-hand side. But in there is a Lance Sergeant, I think he's a Lance Sergeant, and he's the youngest one who was killed in the British Army. I think he was 17 or 18 years old. This fence line on your left, holding up the barbed wire, has got the light gauge engineer's track in the fence line again. As you get to the top of the hill here, just look back at the woods on your left, only a few hundred metres away. That embankment has German artillery on it, and the embankment that you're on now had British trenches on it. That's how close they were. So when they say that artillery was opening up at point blank range, you imagine a shell that could travel 9 miles in 15 seconds being fired from that side of the hill. You'd have had to have had pretty quick reflexes to get your head down inside the trench to avoid having it taken off. And we've got bearded barley on the right hand side and wheat on the left. Sprayed in yellow in my little van, I carry a can of orange spray paint. That is a shell which has been ploughed up, and I sprayed it about a fortnight ago. It's been left there. No one has come to collect it. We've told the Civil Security Defence Force. They know it's there. But that is a German shell which was fired from the other side of Monchy-le-Preux. It's landed in the trenches. It hasn't detonated because it's going into soft mud. But the German shells are notoriously dangerous and unstable, so I was only going to get as close as I could at arm's length, enough to put some orange paint on it. Yeah, health and safety, how high is that wood? I hope it doesn't blow over on us. Yeah, the Germans held court-martials and interrogations of resistance and British troops. Anyone who was found guilty, and that was pretty much anyone that they caught, was then taken into the old citadel, which is on the outskirts of the town, and they were summarily executed, and we will end up against the commission call a cathedral tablet, and we got 24 of them across France in cathedrals where there were significant battles, one of them being Arras here, and it will tell you how many soldiers it commemorates, but I think Arras is up to I can't remember the figure off the top of my head, but I think it's 102,000 soldiers. So a lot of those regiments will come back every year and have services in the cathedral here to remember soldiers that were out on the battlefields here. In the poplar trees just up on our right hand side, you might just be able to make out the monument to the French. The field between us and the poplars is where the French came in on the outskirts of Annie village just after breakfast, and none of them made it from one side of the field to the other. Every single one of the 1,200 were killed in those fields just on the right there.